When we think of the word luck, we often consider it synonymous with the word chance, or perhaps mere chance. Luck seems to be something that is entirely random. In modern literature, we can point to Obi-Wan Kenobi's quote, "In my experience, there's no such thing as luck." And we could also look to Tolkien's The Hobbit, where Gandalf proclaims, "You don't really suppose, do you, that all your adventures and escapes were managed by mere luck, just for your sole benefit?" And like many ancient topics, we have to dive a bit deeper into this word luck to understand its context in Stoicism. Because as we know, language changes, especially when the language itself changes, but even the same language changes over time. So we got to delve really deep into what luck means and if there's an equivalent idea in Stoicism, and can we, after all, make our own luck, which that would be pretty cool if we could. So get nice and cozy because I have a short story to share here. This is an incredible piece of literature in Tolkien's The Hobbit. It's a scene between Bilbo, which is the protagonist, and Gollum, who's something of an antagonist. Gollum is a monster twisted by evil, and Bilbo is somewhere on that journey of growing up, meaning he's progressing towards a person of virtue. So that's what we mean by growing up. It's not just getting older, it's developing wisdom, developing virtue, becoming a better person, working for the good of other people. So at the bottom of a very dark cave that Bilbo fell into, Bilbo and Gollum, they share in a game of riddles, but the stakes are really high. You see, Bilbo is lost. He can't find his way out of this dark cave. And this cave happens to be Gollum's home, if we can call it a home. So he knows the area pretty well. He can find his way out. He can tell Bilbo how to get out. But Gollum is a very hungry individual. So the stakes are as follows. They will play a game of riddles. If Bilbo wins, Gollum will show him the way out of the cave. If Gollum wins, he will get to eat Bilbo whole. And yes, you heard that right. Eat Bilbo whole. Now, those are some very high stakes. But from Bilbo's perspective, he's either going to never find his way out of this cave and starve to death, or he's going to play this game of riddles, maybe win, hopefully win, and then be let out of the cave. So, yeah, they're high stakes, but compared to starving to death over weeks, it's not that bad of a deal. So they exchange a few riddles. They both pass each other's first initial simple ones. However, eventually Gollum gets to a riddle that stumps Bilbo. And I'll read it for you here. Alive without breath, as cold as death, never thirsty, ever drinking, all in mail, never clinking. Of course, Bilbo asks for more time to think about the riddle because he's struggling with it. In the previous term, when he had given Gollum a riddle, he gave Gollum more time. And that's only fair, right? It would seem fair that, hey, if I gave you more time last time for your riddle, it only makes sense for you to give me a bit of time. But Gollum doesn't really play fair. He becomes impatient and he steps into the lake on his way towards his next meal, on his way to attack Bilbo. And as he steps into the lake, a fish jumps out of the water. He disturbs the water and the fish, who's probably having a nap or something, and the fish jumps out of the water. So Bilbo, seeing the fish, he says, "Fish, that's the answer to the riddle. Alive without breath, as cold as death, never thirsty, ever drinking, all in mail, never clinking." So the next riddle, Gollum solves. And then he gives Bilbo his next difficult riddle. Here we go. This thing all things devour. Birds, beasts, trees, flowers. Gnaws iron, bites steel, grinds hard stones to meal. Slays kings, ruins town, and beats high mountain down. So a very similar thing happens as happened the last time. Gollum becomes impatient as Bilbo struggles to find the answer to the riddle, and he again runs at Bilbo, meaning to attack Bilbo, obviously. And Bilbo, he's trying to ask for more time. He's trying to say, give me more time, give me more time. But he's in a dark cave, he can't see, he hears Gollum coming towards him, and he's only able to get out the word time in his fear. So he's trying to say, give me more time, but he says time. And when he says time, he realizes, of course, that the answer to that riddle is time. This thing all things devour, birds, beast, trees, flowers, gnaws iron, bites steel, grinds hard stones to meal, slays kings, ruins town, and beats high mountain down. So for the second time, he gets lucky. I'll put lucky in quotations there. Now Gollum is getting really hungry, so he squats next to Bilbo in the dark. So nobody can see each other, but you can kind of know that Gollum's right there next to you with his stomach growling. So he's waiting for his next riddle to solve, the one that Bilbo's going to give him. And Bilbo's obviously really afraid at this point. So he grabs his sword a little tighter and he puts his hand in his pocket instinctively and he feels around in his pocket and he finds a ring, the ring that he found earlier. And Bilbo, speaking really to himself, he's curious because he found this ring earlier. He just threw it in his pocket, didn't really think much about it. He says to himself, "What do I have in my pocket?" Again, mostly a question to himself. Now Gollum takes it as a riddle, the riddle that he has to solve, and he deems it unfair because it's kind of an unfair question, right? It's like, your riddle is, what did I have for breakfast this morning? It's kind of a random thing that doesn't really require any wit. It's just a guessing game. So that's kind of a lucky thing that Gollum just took that as a riddle question. And they agree that Gollum gets 3 guesses. He fails to guess right. Of course, Bilbo wins. Gollum, again, not being the virtuous one, he's still hungry and he attacks Bilbo. The ring ever so luckily slips onto Bilbo's finger, and because the ring grants invisibility, unbeknownst to Bilbo, he turns invisible and is able to escape. So there's a lot of what we would call luck in that masterpiece of literature. But what do we really make of that? What does it really mean? You could look at that exchange and you could say, yes, Bilbo got lucky. The fish just so happened to jump, giving him the answer to the first riddle. He could only let out time in the second riddle, and he solved that one. And his question, what have I got in my pocket? That wasn't really meant to be a riddle question, but that's what it became. So it's just mere chance. Or is it? Well, this is the difference between how we think about luck, meaning us modern people, and what Stoicism would say luck is. Now, I do have to state, to represent Tolkien's work in the light that he meant it, that the story of The Hobbit is a Christian one, just like The Lord of the Rings. Tolkien was a Christian, and obviously this whole work is a Christian narrative. I mean, the whole story is about The Lord of the Rings. It's about Frodo bearing his cross, literally carrying this thing around his neck up Mount Doom to basically be killed, because that was, it was a sacrifice for him, really. That being said, obviously there's a lot of overlap between Christian and Stoic ideas, so I'm going to represent this in a Stoic light, but it is fundamentally a Christian narrative and a Christian theme, the one that we're talking about here. So what we see in this exchange is that the luck that Bilbo experiences is not really luck at all, in the sense that it's not mere chance. It's something Christians and Stoics call providence. We can think of providence as biased fortune or biased misfortune. Essentially, what that means is that when we act appropriately, our fortunes are biased in a positive way towards ourselves. When we act inappropriately, our fortunes are biased in a negative way towards ourselves. We can see that in both Bilbo and Gollum's game of riddles. Bilbo, you see, he gave Gollum more time to answer his riddle early in the game, and this biased fortune in his favor with the fish jumping later. Gollum, in that same circumstance, he did not give Bilbo more time fairly. He rushed the game, he tried to attack Bilbo, and this resulted in unbiased fortune towards him. So I'm going to give you a quote here from Robert Pierce. This is from a book called Bilbo's Journey. A lot of the theme I took from this. It was a conjunction of, obviously, The Hobbit itself and this book, Bilbo's Journey, which goes into a lot of the philosophical ideas in The Hobbit. And I quote, "The biased fortune is not only biased in favor of the virtuous, rewarding their merits, it is also biased against the wicked, allowing them to destroy themselves through their own malevolent actions." There's this idea that evil and hate hurts itself. And that really is providence. When we act inappropriately, consequences are coming, whether we like it or not. And you can think of this in several different ways. You can think of it in terms of results, meaning like Gollum in this circumstance, that is, Gollum was unlucky because he was acting inappropriately. The fish just happened to jump and Bilbo just happened to be looking that way, and he happened to just say fish, which was the answer to the riddle. We can also think of this, though, in terms of one's own suffering, meaning those who are evil suffer because they are evil. Those who engage in vice, in cowardice, injustice, ignorance, and so on, suffer by the very nature of acting in such a way. To name some historical examples, or an historical example, let's look at Joseph Stalin. You may think of him, that is the leader of the Soviet Union, as being a lucky person in that he had lots of worldly possessions and lots of wealth and lots of power. But then again, Stalin didn't have a single person, not one person who he trusted. He was always in a state of wondering who was plotting against him, who was going to betray him next. So does that come off as someone that's particularly flourishing? Is that how you would like to feel? Would you like to spend every moment of your day just wondering if you could trust anyone? Evil hurts itself. But let's just circle back, get back to this idea of bias, fortune, or luck. We cannot make the assumption that just by us acting virtuously or acting appropriately, that we get the consequences and the results we want. That isn't true, because Stalin, he wanted all of those material possessions. He wanted worldly possessions. He wanted power, after all, and he did get them. He got what he sought out for. Put another way, the Stoic way, there are many things that are simply not up to you. The cosmos is on a trajectory, and you are a part of the cosmos, so you affect that trajectory. But relatively speaking, you're such a small piece of that cosmos that ultimately the results and consequences are not up to you. And that's why it's important to think of luck and providence as biased fortune. It's not good fortune, it's not bad fortune, it's biased fortune. If you act appropriately, your fortune will be biased towards the good, but it won't be certain. You can act appropriately and not get what you want. However, if you act appropriately, that should be enough for you, really, because that's the only thing within your control, and that's where Stoicism comes in. It says if you act appropriately, well, guess what? That's an award in and of itself. You don't need any positive consequence. But another angle to this is that the things that we may deem as a negative consequence may ultimately turn out to be a positive one, and vice versa. We really have no way of knowing how things are going to turn out. Here's a little example from The Hobbit again. When Bilbo first fell into that dark cave, he feels around for his tobacco pipe, and he finds it, luckily, in one piece, and so that was a lucky thing to him. He said, I got my tobacco pipe. He reaches for a match, but he finds that he doesn't have one. He wants to light up some tobacco or to take the stress off being chased by goblins. He initially considers this as bad luck. I can't find a match, therefore I have bad luck. But later in the novel, he reflects on that and he thinks, well, if I would have lit that match, I would have alerted Gollum to my position at that time. I would have alerted goblins, and that probably would have meant that I would have been killed. So in the moment, something may seem like bad luck, but in the long term, maybe in a couple hours, you may look back at that and think, actually, that was good luck. That turned out really good for me. In the Stoic sense, smoking tobacco right now is an indifferent, so it doesn't affect your character, so it's not going to be good or bad either way. So when Bilbo's saying, this is unfortunate, this is bad, obviously that's not a Stoic statement. Bilbo's not being particularly Stoic in that moment. And that's the exact reason why, is because you don't really know what the consequences are going to be. So let's bring all this home really quick. What is luck? Luck, I've defined in previous episodes, it's when externals work for you as opposed to against you. That's what I would say a Stoic definition of luck is. But the idea of providence and grace is that if you act appropriately, things will be biased in your favor. Now, it's not a perfect equation because the cosmos does what's best for the cosmos, and it does not necessarily do what's best for you, but acting appropriately is your best shot at a better life. Now, let's get nerdy just for a few more seconds here. In Star Wars, there's a scene where Luke Skywalker, he's learning to use the Force. Now, Obi-Wan Kenobi, he's the old wizard, the old Jedi Master, the Gandalf equivalent. He's teaching him to deflect gunshots with the lightsaber. And Luke, he's getting zapped Not fatally, but he keeps getting zapped by this. It's called a blaster, which basically just stings you, right? So Kenobi does something interesting. He puts a helmet on Luke and he blocks his vision so he can't see. And he tells him to reach out with his feelings. Doing so, Luke is able to deflect the shots. The captain of the ship they are on remarks, "Well, you got lucky. That's luck." And Kenobi replies, "In my experience, there's no such thing as luck." So to hit this idea home, in the Stoic sense, there is no luck in how we think about it. There's no mere chance. Everything that happens is for a reason. It's part of the ordering logos of the cosmos. If you work for the cosmos, if you become one with nature like the Stoic and the Jedi, things will happen to you that you may perceive as lucky. But in actuality, there is no luck. There is only acting appropriately and ultimately being rewarded, or acting inappropriately and ultimately being punished. I'll give you one more quote from Bilbo's Journey by Robert Pierce. "The economy of grace that rules the cosmos ensures that virtue is ultimately rewarded as surely as it ensures that vice is ultimately punished." Is that statement literally true? I don't know. Who knows? But what I do know is that if you live by that belief, that doing good is rewarded in and of itself, that is a better alternative than any other I can think of. If you liked this video, please hit the like button and subscribe with the notifications turned on. The Strong Stoic Podcast is also available in audio wherever you listen to your podcasts. Finally, you can join Substack to gain access to transcripts, articles, and premium podcast episodes.